Hello and welcome to Direct Approach with Wayne Moorehead, an exclusive podcast by Direct Selling News, where Wayne interviews the channel's leading corporate executives to provide timely insights and relevant takeaways to help grow and evolve your businesses. In today's episode, Wayne is joined by Tyler Whitehead, Chief Executive Officer at Arbonne. Arbonne is an international company with a robust line of skincare, hair care, makeup, body care, and nutrition products that promote a healthy lifestyle. In 2021, Arbonne ranked number 22 on the DSN Global 100 list with $847 million in revenue. But it is also the company's commitment to its brand values of empowerment, transparency, and sustainability that help make it stand out. Last year, Tyler was named CEO of Arbonne after nearly 2 decades in direct selling's personal care, nutritional, and dietary supplement space. Tyler has a long history of unleashing human potential by finding the intersection of people and purpose, and he now brings that passion to his role at Arbonne. Today on Direct Approach, Tyler and Wayne look at how he is managing the balance of growth with the mission of maintaining purpose and connection, and how to keep the focus on customer and distributor in a tech-driven world. Tyler also talks about the value of returning to face-to-face events and why it's important to balance human connection with digital ones. Speaking of face-to-face events and live events, we want to make sure you have the upcoming DSN hybrid events on your calendar for April. For the first time in 3 years, we will be back in person for the 13th annual DSN Global Celebration and Awards and DSU educational events, all taking place this April 19th through the 21st at the Omni Frisco Hotel in Frisco, Texas. This year, we will have more awards and recognition than ever before, and more than 35 industry legends, experts, and new speakers who will share their stories, learnings, and insights at DSU. Keynote speakers Kendra Hall and Jason Dorsey will be joined by some of the biggest names and brightest leaders in the channel. And of course, if attending in person, you'll enjoy networking, connection, and momentum that you can only get at an in-person event. Registration is free for all active corporate direct selling executives. To claim your complimentary ticket to DSU, register today at dsu2022.com. Before we start the interview, we want to thank this episode's sponsor, Exego. In an industry that demands adaptability, Exego delivers unrivaled access to the data that drives your business, from CRM to transactions to commissions. Flexible, scalable, and powerful, with Exego, the possibilities are unlimited. Learn more at exego.com. That is EXIGO.com. And now, please help me welcome your host, Wayne Moorehead, and today's guest, Tyler Whitehead, Chief Executive Officer of Arbonne.
Hey, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DSN's Direct Approach podcast. I am your host, Wayne Moorehead, and I'm really excited today to be joined by somebody that I've known and admired for a lot of years now, the CEO of Arbonne, Tyler Whitehead. Tyler, thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Wayne. Great to see you. Appreciate the opportunity to chat for a few minutes.
Yeah, of course. I've really been looking forward to the conversation today, and especially to get your insights and expertise on a lot of the really interesting dynamics and changes that are happening in the channel right now. You've had a really impressive and interesting career. Can you tell us a little bit about the path that led you into direct selling?
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. I think, my career started really, as with many of us, we did what we thought was going to be the ideal solution for a future of security. I went to law school and followed in my father's footsteps, who was a lawyer, and I actually have 3 brothers who are also in the practicing attorneys today. And I like to say I'm the best kind of lawyer. I'm a former lawyer. I managed to find my way out of that path. Spent about 8 or 10 years in large law firms doing mergers and acquisitions work and really financial transactions focused on business. And I continue to have many clients that I was a little bit envious of when I would come and engage with them for a period of time and help their business. And then I would go to another transaction or to another client. And I always felt like I wanted to be a part of that business for for the duration, particularly startups and entrepreneurial enterprises. I was highly attracted to that work. Early stage venture capital businesses that have great ideas and work with entrepreneurs and help them take that to grow an entrepreneurial business. So about 10 years into my legal career, I had an opportunity to join a multi-billion-dollar direct selling company that had, publicly traded, had a lot of enterprise around the world, and to go in-house as general counsel. And so that's where I really was introduced to the direct selling world. And I was so happy to be there, mostly because of the people that I started interacting with and that same entrepreneurial spirit, and seeing people who, on a daily basis were looking to grow their business, to help others start a business, and really that continuity of really entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. And really found that across the industry. So that's how you and I met in this industry. And
yeah,
I just started to get to know people, and didn't feel like a competition across companies. It really felt like it was a collegial experience with people that were all really, different forms of the same version of helping others. And I was just highly attracted to that. About 10 years into that experience as in-house general counsel, I had the opportunity to start working more on the business side, really with geographic expansion, market growth. Started working on the operations and sales side a little bit more, and ultimately, grew into the executive side of the business. And about a year ago, had the opportunity to take over as CEO of Arbonne and really continue that journey. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of this industry for the last almost 20 years and continue that growth, and that excitement still is there every single day. So it's been a little bit of a twisty path, but kind of direct from, being engaged with people, helping clients, and then entrepreneurs, and then ultimately helping, tens of thousands of entrepreneurs every day with what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah, it has been an interesting and kind of windy path as I've watched your career, but that's, I think, what's made it so interesting. I think while you were there at that company, going from general counsel into the business side or the sales side was a pretty firmly established path, with Steve and Truman kind of doing that before you. But in most of our companies, that's pretty rare. So what were some of the challenges that you faced shifting from a GC role into the sales field role? Was that a difficult transition, or had the GC been interacting enough with the field that it felt pretty natural?
I always made it a point to add value, wherever I was. And in that role, I think the value add was, how do you find solutions for the business? And I think, not every attorney has that, that background or that desire. Some are more engaged with risk management, and that was a big part of what I did. But I always found it more exciting and more engaging to be on the solution side, the design side, building new approaches to a compensation plan, or building, a different approach to a go-to-market strategy. And so, that came, a little bit natural for me. But one thing that was helpful, and I think it's important for many companies, is finding ways to have cross-functional training and really find those paths that can be, even if it's only for a few months, or projects. It's very easy to take a project and add in people from other functional areas that you may not think would add a lot of value, but bring them in and see. And that's really where I discovered, a lot of my desire and where I ultimately wanted to be more full time. And so those early projects that I was fortunate enough to be invited to participate with, with the marketing team, and with, my wife, Elizabeth, has been in the industry for 25 years. And so
Elizabeth's amazing. I've learned a lot from her.
We worked closely together. And so, I had that in my sort of home life. We always joked and told people that, our employer got 3 of us for the price of 2, because we would both go home and work all night on the same work, and we would share our work, and then we'd go back the next day with some ideas that we would contribute. So we had that in common. And so I think that helped me kind of create that cross-functional, I would look at it from her perspective as a CMO or as a CEO, and then I would look at it from a perspective as a lawyer or an operations guy trying to run supply chain. And so that cross-functional ideation and training on projects initially is where I got started, and then really being, offered a position to really change tracks. So I encourage everybody to go out and find those projects with those high performers. And I think today in particular, Wayne, as you know, it's critical that people have agility. Our own, even in a functional path today, it's not a straight shot anymore from, go and get the technical skills that you need for your function and then just continue to refine. There's some major jumps in learning, and there's some major pivots that are taking place even within a functional track. So that agility is one of the things that I look for, in our executives and in our employees. And when you find that, that high performer from a talented perspective with a high EQ and with a willingness to learn, it translates, and you'd be amazed how much you can pull energy and build excitement at a career path by offering those other challenges that might seem a little bit out of the norm. For example, taking an attorney and saying, now go run a sales team. It seems like a bigger shift than it really is. But I think if you find those talented people and give them that opportunity, it's an important part of training. And particularly over the last couple of years, as we know, our ability to be agile and pivot, I think, was the word of 2020, probably maybe the most overused word, but it was highly appropriate and very, very needed for individual growth as an executive or as a participant in a corporate enterprise.
I think that's such an important insight and such important advice. While you were talking, I was just kind of likening that into my own career. And even when I went to my first direct selling company in a marketing role, it was in a centralized kind of corporate marketing role. And about a year in, I shifted into the US market. So same building, but completely different orientation towards the distributor and the customer. And I felt like it wasn't until I had that experience in a market, again, even though it's the US, that I really understood the direct selling channel, the distributor mindset, the customer mindset, what motivates them, what their purchase drivers are. And so I do look at a shift like that into getting experience with the field, on the ground in a market as vital to my understanding. It provided so much more context. And I think the same can be said, as you mentioned, to all the other functions and skill sets, trying to get as broad of an understanding, comprehensive an understanding of what it takes to build the business, I think is vital to anyone's career development. I love that.
Yeah, that's a great insight, Wayne. I totally agree. I think the mistake a lot of companies can make is they don't offer the head of supply chain the opportunity to go to an event and feel the energy of the sales team. They don't offer somebody in the legal department the opportunity to go and sit, knee to knee and face to face with leaders in the field who are building their businesses, entrepreneurs, and listening to their challenges and truly understanding. There's a lot of talk recently, the flavor of the day is that customer orientation. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand what that is, and particularly in an organization, direct selling organizations are enormously powerful when it comes to purpose and finding that purpose. But if the purpose of the supply chain is really different at the core than the purpose of the sales team or the purpose of the business, then you can get disconnected. And it really, in terms of cohesion and building a team, bringing people at every function and every expertise to have those experiences like you just described, Wayne, in your marketing career is essential for that development. And really, it makes the whole organization better. And it creates, in my view, a much stronger teamwork because everyone feels that same ultimate purpose. Yes, supply chain has a little different, objective. Their tactic is to keep products in stock, but their purpose is not to keep products in stock. And so it's just finding that connection to that customer, as you found, that I think is really powerful. And it was the same for me. Once I started having those interactions, it really changed my perspective, the lens through which I did my risk management work or my other corporate work.
Absolutely. Having that really cross-functional, comprehensive perspective, I think, is vital, especially today, as you mentioned, that we're moving so quickly. You also mentioned EQ. I think it gives all of us more empathy and understanding for what it takes to do each other's roles and what goes into that. And again, can make us move a lot quicker. So Arbonne is an amazing company. It's a company I've watched for years and years. It's been amazing at growing and really kind of reinventing itself, rethinking itself multiple times. It's grown to incredible revenue at this point. It's got a long history, a great portfolio of products, a large engaged distributor base. While this is exactly the goal that we all want to achieve at our companies, it can present some challenges, especially in today's really rapidly changing dynamic environment where we're becoming much more technology driven, as you mentioned, more consumer driven. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of working and evolving a legacy direct selling company that has, again, an amazing history, but there's some challenges that come with that?
I think there are those scale issues that start to arrive. As you know, one of the fundamental principles that Arbonne operates on is connection to our field. Our consultants and many of them have been with our company for 10, 20, 30 years or more. And so they have amazing perspective and in that career that they've had with a business that has spanned multiple CEOs and multiple management teams. It's one of those interesting dynamics where that longevity really becomes the key stakeholders over decades, and the connection to them is very powerful. It also can create some challenges or some drags on the ability to improve process through growth. And so as the revenue grows and as the geography grows, as the portfolio grows, the real important thing is to continue to build the process that can help that growth be seamless and smooth. So a lot of work over the past few years in investing in technology, investing in process, and in some ways really converting what can be I want to say a family-run type business into a professional corporation without losing that connection to those key stakeholders. And that's the balance. If you become all corporate, if you will, and using corporate in the pejorative sense, if you become too corporate, then you lose that purpose and you lose that connection with those key stakeholders. If you don't become corporate enough, then you have sort of self-limiting process that will, you'll grow to a certain level. And then because the process breaks or because you don't have the ability to move beyond that with scale, you can bring it back down. And so I think that's where you see these evolutions of companies that kind of go up a little bit and then down, and they can never break that next growth level or that next level of opportunity. So for me, it's about that balance and building a team that can understand that stakeholder mentality and build in the process that will help us grow. And technology is an important part of that, to be able to really scale the business, remove those barriers. And then it's about choosing what of that technology becomes, infrastructure, backbone, support versus the purpose. And so, I think in the last few years, there have been a lot of us who have, become excited about the ability of a platform or of a technology. I ground myself and I continue to ground my team and go back to, say, how excited were we when we moved from, flyers in paper that we would put on the windshield of cars to a fax machine where you could fax a lot of people, to an email distribution system where you could email, more people at scale. And so if you put it in that context, the new technologies in terms of even social media are an evolution of that in our business. they are not a different business. It is still people connecting with other people, sharing products that they're fans of, that they're passionate about. And so, my perspective at least is to continue to keep that, the next version of TikTok or social media, it's a new telephone, or it's a better version of the telephone, or a better version of electronic connection. It is not a different business. And I think that's been helpful for our teams in kind of understanding that's support for scale. But the purpose and the orientation around, we have to have amazing products, and we have to keep the product pipeline going, because a new version of TikTok is not a product. It is a way to reach people. And that's the perspective that we continue to look at through the technology lens. And then make sure that we are building those processes that can allow us to grow and not kind of be that limiting factor that keeps us from moving to the next level of growth.
Yeah, really interesting. A couple things I want to dig in there. It is really easy to get lost in the technology, to lose focus on the overall strategy of the business, the consumers, the distributors, when we're trying to transform digitally, virtually. So how do you keep the focus on the customer and distributor internally from a cultural standpoint? I mean, again, you talked about how these are tools and platforms to just enhance our distributors' way of business, not to really completely change the way they do business. How do you keep that focus on the customer and distributor?
Yeah, the things that where we're really leaning in on some process. So I mentioned process, and a lot of that has been building out a communications framework. So that framework includes these key stakeholders. So some of those stakeholders obviously include our shareholders, the ownership of the company. We have hundreds of employees who are key stakeholders. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for them in their progression and in their careers. And we touched on a little bit of that in terms of finding opportunity for them to be connected to our field and to our consultants. And then creating a framework where we have multiple voices. And so that we've created both an innovation summit that we do on an annual basis, where we have meetings with key leaders who have both 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of the culture and the business and the entrepreneurial mindset, where they've really perfected their ability to scale and grow and support other entrepreneurs. So taking that framework and those ideas and build them into what we're doing with technology. So their voice is very critical to have. And then we've set up, Wayne, several, we call them studio teams. Some people call them, different forms of product development organizations. But we bring in those same stakeholders. So we bring in our shareholders to make sure their vision is clear. We bring in our employees, we bring in our sales force, we bring in these entrepreneurs, both new and ones who have 10 years or 20 years of experience, so that all of that perspective helps us inform now, how do we take those best values? And that's where we get that continuity from our purpose and the human part, I call it the human powered part of our business, with the technology, so that we don't lose the human connection. We don't lose that insight that's come over 10, 20, 30 years that I think are still critical insights to build into the technology part of it. So as we build a new tool or as we build a program, we're really leveraging this communication framework, those studio teams, those innovation summits, to check us. Because, if we bring in a digital expert or a customer experience expert, particularly people, and a lot of those talents and capabilities have not come from the direct selling industry. They might come from, big tech. They might come from Amazon, or they might come from, name your big tech company or platform. They have amazing technical skills, but if you don't marry them very quickly with those other stakeholders and that context, I would call it, then you can get really going the wrong direction, where it doesn't have the right customer in mind, or it doesn't have the right support. It makes it easy for us, I think, with Arbonne, because our mission statement, our mission for 42 years has been to empower people to flourish. And so that empowerment mindset, which I know it's a great word in our industry, and I think it's one that a lot of people could think through. But if you really think about what that means of empowering the entrepreneur with the tool that they need to be successful, but it has to work for the entrepreneur, and it's not about the company, creating a faster sign up time, or the company having better data about a whole, a wash of people where everyone's a number. If that becomes the end goal, then you will lose sight of that ultimate consultant relationship that's so important. So it's just kind of bringing those voices in at multiple levels, and not losing that 10 or 20 or 30-year entrepreneur who have amazing talents. And at the same time, having them be in the same room and hear from somebody who's a digital native, who grew up, with a phone in their hand, who grew up on, TikTok or Instagram, or, even, Facebook is probably one of those things that's a little bit more legacy than some of the new platforms. So having all of those voices in the room, and then as a company being able to take that and say, okay, now we're going to lead this. We all understand that the environment's changing. We understand that there's a new world that we have to remain competitive in, with these upgrades in how we share our product, how we share, our vision, how we create entrepreneurs, and then it starts to fall into place where you can really scale the business. And those many voices, I think, Wayne, are probably the key for me to make sure we don't lose sight of our purpose and what ultimately is going to be the competitive advantage of our business. But we also don't, remain focused on what worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago, because we know that will be a recipe for decline, probably rapid decline over the next few years, if you don't embrace that digital evolution.
Absolutely. I love the idea you mentioned about establishing that anchor of purpose to align and prioritize all the initiatives around, and also the importance of bringing everybody in early and bringing in that historical context as well as the new perspective, because these new technologies can get implemented and introduced so quickly that not only can we leave the distributors behind, but we can also leave the internal employees behind. And so having them at the table, aligned all throughout these implementation and launch processes, helps to make sure that they understand these changes that they're delivering on. Without that, they're kind of just flying blind. So I love that. Talking about the importance of digital, a lot of our companies will put a priority in their annual planning, or have kind of a war cry for a year of digital transformation. This is going to be the digital transformation. And, they end up maybe adding an app or reskinning a website. So for you, at such a large organization, again, an amazing legacy organization, what do companies need to be doing to actually do digital transformation the right way? Where's a place to start? You can get lost in the weeds. There's so many systems that make up the IT stack, that make up the MarTech stack, that it's easy to kind of get lost in it. But where's a great place to start for a company that says, okay, we understand the baseline, we understand kind of current state where we've been, how do we develop that future state?
Yeah, great question, and certainly a challenge. I, like many, probably have both moved too quickly, where we've moved out from under either our consultants in terms of their capabilities, or we've moved too quickly. So change management, I think, is a very important part of knowing, how fast and how many different initiatives can we load up. It's one of the things with digital, you can scale and launch a lot of programs and a lot of product very, very quickly, and find that the take rate and really the adoption isn't happening. So you don't get an ROI. And so you can get in this cycle of adding another one, and you don't realize that really it's an adoption. It's a change management problem. It's not we don't have the right tool or the right program or the right product from a tech perspective. That's one thing I would say, that continue to focus on. Really, quality is better than quantity, and focus on a defined strategic objective and plan that the entire organization is a part of. So the other important thing is that it's not a digital responsibility in the digital team. It's not a CX responsibility. It's not an IT responsibility. And we've all seen the evolution over the last few years of, the title soup that's going on with, it's like everything from, CIO to CXO to CDO to, all kinds of different titles that everyone's trying to find what is that. And I think it's probably a good marker of the fact that it's not one person or one function's responsibility to become digital. It has to be through every organization. And again, it would be similar to saying, well, the IT guys will have a great telephone and everyone else is going to use the fax machine in the organization. And if you don't have everybody using the same telephone in terms of digital organization, digital KPIs, digital principles across the entire organization, you are going to leave people behind, and you are going to have this soup of confusion as to what's my role and how do I interact as we become a digital enterprise. The digital function is a part of has to be in the DNA of every function and every leader. So a good place to begin to answer your question is customer support, is the sales team, is the digital team, and I think it depends on your organization. You have to look at your capabilities in your organization and where can you find those ambassadors, those early adopters, those evangelists from your team, and take them and say, okay, you will be an example and you will help everyone else, but your job is to include and bring everyone else into the conversation as to that digital roadmap and to this, and I guess the final thought, Wayne, there's we could talk about this for a long time, but one of the things that I've discovered is that it really cannot be a project orientation. It has to be a culture orientation. So meaning this is a long-term evolution. It is not a transformation that happens, through the rollout of your SAP platform or the rollout of your new CRM tool, right? That's not it. That's not the beginning and the end. Even at Arbonne, we made that mistake a little bit over the last couple of years where, there was a need for an infrastructure change on our shopping engine. And so we chose, one of the more powerful shopping engines out there, SAP Hybris, and we said, okay, and we put a pin on the calendar and said, okay, at this date in 2021, when we roll our SAP Commerce shopping engine, now we're transformed. And it was a big mistake for a couple of reasons. One is the employees and the tech team and the digital team and even the field, in terms of their expectation was when that date comes and we flip the switch and we have SAP Hybris working, then all our problems are solved and now we're a digital, enabled company. And that you and I both know that's just simply not true. It was one step in a marathon. It probably was, the first mile in a 26-mile marathon. And then it's what's the next marathon. So I think that mindset of knowing that these are, this is a constant evolution and improvement. And the other thing is you can't keep up that same pace of investment. It's very challenging to say, okay, we're gonna have 1 year where we cut the budget for everything else and we're gonna overinvest in tech. And then the next year we'll go back and invest in everything else. If you start to build your organization that way, or you start to build your investment or your strategic roadmap that way, you're going to find yourself in that second year with still a need to invest in technology and digital, and you don't have the ability to take it away and then reinvest somewhere else. So it has to be a balanced approach across the entire organization, and just plan on it being a part of what you do every year. And then really be focused around, what kind of business are we in, and make sure that we're not losing the innovation that's happening in the product. Arbonne, it particularly is important for us to have innovative products come to market on a regular basis. And if we decide we're going to take all of that investment and put it all into technology every year, then we probably need to reorient ourselves around being a technology company. And my view is that we're not a technology company. We need to have the basics covered, and really make sure that that's a balanced approach. And so balanced scorecard, KPIs across the entire enterprise, on a digital KPI for every owner, and really elevate those so that the whole company has the same set of those evolutionary KPIs around digital. So it's not just the digital team, it's not just a CX team, it's not just an IT team, or some combination of those. It really is organization-wide.
I love that. You said so many great things. I was frantically writing down notes and ideas, and I want to circle back to a couple of these. One of the things that you mentioned that I think is so important and that I almost never hear, you said one of the best places to start is at customer and distributor support. I think oftentimes that does not get the recognition in the importance that it plays in our distributor and customers' journeys, in our customers' lives. If we think about it, with so many of our interactions shifting to digital and virtual, calling in, chatting, emailing, whatever it is into customer and distributor support might be one of the only places where they have human interaction. And it's a huge opportunity to share the brand message, to deliver on a brand promise, to help, as you mentioned, manage expectations. Leaving them with an incredible customer or distributor support experience really can put a halo around everything else that your company does. And it can cover up, I think, a bunch of mistakes as well when you can leave a customer really satisfied. So I think that expectations is a huge part. Managing expectations properly is a huge challenge and opportunity for us in direct selling.
I would just build on that, Wayne. I think that's brilliant. I think you're exactly right. The understanding and the learning of what are the needs. So when you're looking to build a digital solution, if you don't start with that, where you're hearing what are the calls about every day, what are the conversations about, what are the needs, and really take that as the foundational data, as here's the experience that this many customers are having every day with Arbonne or with your business, and then take that as one of those key insights. So when I say start there, it really is a wealth of information to be able to understand what is the product that we should be building, or what is the program that we should be developing, and then having that, to your point, at different levels of support. So, at some level, do you want it to be really seamless and have it be, a text bot exchange with somebody on a question? Sure. There are those interactions. But at another level, there needs to be that white glove, connection, as you put it, with somebody who says, I'm trying to understand how I can promote into the next level of this business and increase my earnings and do something for my team. And those interactions have to be that, those touch points, to your point, are so critical. And really, I think, can be a huge differentiator from the experience of shopping or the experience of buying things on an Instacart or on an Amazon or something else, where, I don't know about you, but I've never personally talked to anybody at Amazon. I've bought a few things from Amazon, but I don't have a relationship with Amazon. And I think that's something that in our industry particularly is a competitive advantage, where we have, tens of thousands of ambassadors out there that can answer questions. And we have this support team at the corporate environment, and switching all of that out for a digital experience can be a bit of a mistake if you don't really understand how much value or what that value of that experience and those touch points can be. And so I would caution people to be careful about moving into something that's, looks like, the expectation of consumers. But if you want to match the Amazon experience, great, go do that. If what you want to do is have a business where people have an experience with the brand and an experience with the product, and ultimately they may want to have an experience or be exposed to an entrepreneurial experience, then you have to think differently about what those early touch points are. And if you transfer all of those to becoming an Amazon experience, you may lose the opportunity to convert those customers into somebody who's an affiliate or an ambassador, or somebody who ultimately finds an entrepreneurial connection with a business opportunity to help sell and share those products that they became familiar with. So I think it's a really good starting point, and it is one of those things that if you just look at the tech and solve it for tech, then you might miss out on that competitive advantage evolution that that should remain and should be something you enhance, not try and figure out how quickly you can offshore all of your customer support.
Right, absolutely. It is our superpower, that personal touch. Bringing that into the purchasing and customer relationship is what sets us apart, is our competitive advantage. I love that. Also, as it relates to expectations, you talked about how kind of these big field announcements about this will change or that'll change. And, they start to believe that it's going to fundamentally change how they do business. And there's a risk to not meet their expectations. I agree with that, and helping to keep it, maybe not even make these large announcements to the entire field. Maybe it's more just updates, again, as it kind of gets back to managing expectations, because a lot of the technology and the platforms that our companies will be rolling out, the changes and evolution that they'll create are really subtle. If it's really good, we almost probably shouldn't notice a lot of it. It should start feeling more and more like other products that we buy from other websites and other experiences we go through as the purchase process. So just understanding that they can be so subtle and so simple and have far-reaching impact, but managing that expectation around the communication and impact is really important. And then lastly, I just want to come back to where you talked about having these shared responsibilities, these shared success metrics, where IT now and technology permeates throughout the entire organization and has a significant impact on every organization. It can't just be relegated to one department. Those silos have to come down. Those cross-functional teams have to come together and develop those shared responsibilities and shared sales metrics. I love that you said that. So I want to shift in a little bit more to some technology discussion around virtual and remote as it relates to work, as it relates to events. Now, where the majority of our interactions are digital, the last couple of years, almost all of our events have been virtual. I'm interested to hear about this dynamic as it relates to distributors and employees, but I also want to get your personal story a little bit. This really impacted the process in which you went through for joining Arbonne. You joined when everything was locked down, everything was virtual. So if I remember correctly, I don't think you met anyone ever in person. You never had the opportunity to really tour the building. So talk about what that was like, how joining a new company and a new culture in an almost completely virtual way. Can you share some insights on that?
Yeah, no, it was kind of a crazy process.
Sure, yeah.
We reached out to by a recruiting firm that sent me emails and ultimately met some people via Zoom calls. Got to meet the board, got to meet the board of directors and really the search committee for Arbonne, and did it all via Zoom and really did some different approaches to interviews, different sessions, a couple of people at different times at the same, multiple people with me, and then one-on-ones. But went through the whole process, took several months. I was very happy where I was and wasn't considering moving. But then to be able to, make those considerations based on, what you find information wise, I started following leaders, online to see if I could soak up some of that experience and see, what did they talk about and what kind of people were they and what kind of values did they have. And so, really kind of do my own homework and due diligence virtually. And I think, overall it was, a great experience. Ultimately when I arrived my first day, there was nobody in the building. I really had sort of an admin assistant that walked me through an empty building, said, here's your new headquarters, and all of my employees were remote. And then 1 month later, we did a complete remote virtual convention with 20,000 people, registered for our event. And to try and get to know me, I mean, it makes me laugh a little bit because we had this beautiful like digital stage that was built, and it was made to look like it was maybe like 150 feet wide. But then they put me on the stage, and I looked like I was about this tall. And you know me personally, and I'm
tall.
I'm tall. But everyone's like, okay, I don't really get in the whole presentation and get to know Tyler as the new CEO was this much of me on this giant virtual looking background screen, and it was beautifully produced. Great partners that helped us do that, but you kind of lost the context, and it's almost like you lose your balance or you lose your bearings to some extent. So that virtual evolution, it can be done. I've recruited, and now our recruiting process and building a team. We're looking to build in more flexibility, to build in more opportunity for executives to be remote some days of the week, and build a team that might not be in the same city as them. And we're exploring all of that in a very rapid pace. But I can tell you, after the first year was very exciting, and we kind of leaned in really heavily, and it was like, great, we're never going back. And then the second year, last year, really, we started understanding that there is an energy depletion that happens over time. And that bank account that had been pretty full from those in-person events or from in-person relation building with, other members of your team, starts to just gradually get depleted. And I haven't found a good way. If anybody out there has a great way to fill that back up all through a Zoom call or through a virtual connection, please reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But we've found that need to have those meaningful moments and connection are really important to kind of refill that energy in people and that excitement for the business. Even over the last few weeks, we've had a couple of collaborative meetings where we've had a few hours with the team, and I can tell you a couple hours with a few people in a room, and they come back and I get notes, and I get I can see their emails about what they're excited on the project, and the engagement just goes up. We have to understand that balance, and those meaningful moments have to be in person. I've always been fairly confident of that. And I think if anything, I've become more open to a lot of the work being done virtually or in a hybrid environment than I was, where it was, I can't wait to get back in the office 60 hours a week. And everyone needs to be back in the office 60 hours a week, or we're not going to be able to get anything done. I've certainly moderated my personal position on that. But I think for collaboration, for, community building, for relationship, those are really critical aspects and culture is hard to build virtually. The one thing, Wayne, that I think has been interesting, we've had a couple of in-person meetings in the past few weeks and with our consultants, and even the young, what I would call very digital savvy, very digital native, millennials, Gen Zs, 20 somethings, that started the business in virtual world. So they've never been to an in-person event. They've been in the business 2 years plus and joined the business, in kind of a virtual world in 2020, and came to their first event, and they were blown away by the experience and by the ability to interact. And they were like, this is what I've been waiting for. So I think there is that, those in-person moments that we'll have to find a way to continue to say these types of moments, and particularly in our business, recognition was one of those.
Absolutely.
We struggled with finding the right ways to do recognition in a virtual meeting, and recognition, and then just being together face to face and feeling that energy in the room. So we're just trying to find the right balance, Wayne. Right now, it's we know it can't be all virtual, and we know it shouldn't be all in person, because that means we're leaving a lot of people out that could experience it. So this event we just did, we had about 2,000 people in person, and then we had 10,000 people join virtually. So, you think about those 10,000 people did have an experience. They did connect. They did feel like they were part of something. And, these chats, and you can see all the interaction and the engagement, all those mechanisms we leveraged. The people in the room had a great experience. The people virtual had a great experience. And so that was really a good example of a hybrid event. But those other 10,000 that only saw it through a virtual screen are really looking forward to being in person at one point.
Yeah, they're definitely missing one of the dimensions of that event experience. I do think you're right. There is no way to completely replace or recreate the energy and excitement that happens in person at events. It's impossible to duplicate, I think, virtually. So while virtual does provide huge advantages like scale, like reach, again, I think all of us got maybe a little too excited when we saw some of the reach numbers from some of our virtual events, saying, oh my gosh, wow, for a tenth of the cost, we were able to reach 10 times the people, and thought that maybe that could be the new way going forward. But I think, as you mentioned, we're all slowly realizing that there is an element that's missing, that especially these distributors and reps that joined over the last couple of years, that just like you were never able to walk through the company headquarters, they haven't been able to come experience the community, experience the culture, to feel the energy of all the other reps together. That is something that can really solidify their relationship with us as companies, with us as brands. As you're looking out the rest of this year and into the next, is there some type of strategy or framework that you're using? Meaning, like looking at certain types of events, like any, trainings or city events or something, we're going to try to shift to digital, but keep convention in person, or are these discussions that are still going on there at your headquarters?
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're still trying to organize, what that right balance would be. I think coming out of the last year, we will probably lean in more on in person to kind of restart and re-engage, particularly with those that I mentioned that joined the business and have never had those in-person experiences. So we may over-index to in-person in 2022, and then come back to some type of a balance, recognition, and those experiences. And really depends on the level of that leader and that consultant. But I really have a dream or a vision of having people that are customers that would come to an event and feel the passion of all the people whose lives have been changed from that product. And so I think even not just top leadership, which is typically where they will engage and they'll be at in-person events and conventions, and they will earn those those success trip rewards. But I really think that there's an opportunity to even broaden that and have that opportunity for those experiences to be even at the customer, the affiliate level, and create even greater brand equity and connection to the experience of being a part of Arbonne. And I think it's something, again, it's similar to our discussion about the support center and the agents. Even for customers, that's a touch point, and that's one of those meaningful moments that can change someone's perspective about a brand. And I still remember many of those that I've had. The first time I went to a Ritz-Carlton and the guy in the driveway knew my name. It's like those kinds of things. It's like when you have that experience and with a brand, you don't forget, and you feel like, oh, they know who I am and they care about me. And I think those in-person, experiences, as opposed to virtual, which also can be meaningful. I still get a kick out of the fact that if I ask for a friend request from somebody in our consultant, and they may not think they're important, but they suddenly get interested if it's like, oh, thank you for noticing me and asking to be my friend online. And so there can still be ways to kind of, hey, I know your name, I know who you are, we care about you virtually, and those can be really powerful. And it's the same thing as the analysis that before Facebook, you ask people how many friends they have, and they have 30, and now people generally have a circle of friends that are larger, 10 times that or more. So I think there's still that opportunity to leverage that. And to your point on the digital engagement and the reach numbers. It's like, those are powerful ways to grow a business, but not if that's the end goal. If that's the end goal, then I think you start to lose these other personal, human to human powered connections. And it's just got to be in balance. And you really have to say, ultimately, that's what we want. And if that means we grow a little bit slower, or, you might have 1 million followers online, but you may not know all of them very well. And I don't know what the right number is, but at some level, you have so many that you're not able to effectively engage on a personal level. And I think that's a really important part of our business.
Absolutely. Your idea of meaningful moments is really powerful, especially as it relates to the entire distributor and customer journey. Historically, our ability to create these meaningful moments for most of our distributors, especially our customers, was really limited. That relationship, those touch points were owned primarily by the distributor or the person that signed them up. Today, as we look at it, there's hundreds of touch points, hundreds of opportunities along our distributors and customers' journey where we can provide these meaningful moments. How do you, as an organization and as a leader, go about planning these, making sure you're bringing the right people to the table so that you can really create and deliver these meaningful moments? Because as you mentioned, somebody just remembering your name can have a huge impact on your relationship, your emotional connection with a brand.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is one of those opportunities that we have to continue to find ways to connect and be more personally engaged. I don't know if I have the right answer, Wayne, in terms of all of the tactics that we use, but it really is a variety of intersections. It's each of those touch points. It's leveraging some of the virtual, but really, finding those, what is the in-person moment going to look like and when? And, I think it's different by level of engagement in the business. And it's something that I think you can architect, those connections. And, I'd love to have a KPI that starts to articulate each of those contact points and each of those connections. And in some ways, I have mixed feelings about even doing that, because I know if we don't have the data and we don't measure it, we're not going to get better at it. But in some ways, for me, in my background, that personal handshake or the personal hug or those moments, if I start counting how many hugs and how many handshakes, maybe they're not all that meaningful anymore, because it's a data point instead of an actual human experience. So I'm still grappling with how we make sure that we don't turn our human side of our business into a bunch of data points and try and pursue those. But I also know it's important for us to find a way to make sure that we don't not have the data and we don't understand that right balance. So I think it's just a mix of our events, our contacts for support, our promotion contacts, our recognition contacts. Each of those areas continue to be things that we will measure, and make sure we keep going forward that way. We one of the interesting challenges we have right now, Wayne, is that we had enormous growth, at the start of the pandemic. And as I mentioned, a lot of people that actually grew their businesses and had promotions that normally would have been recognized in person at a convention or at an event, and they never had that experience. And now, after 2.5 years of that, we'll have a convention this summer, and there's a request and a need to recognize all of them. And we may have to break out a camp chair and some and a tent, and
add a day.
Add some of those things, because I feel really strongly that it's important that we don't lose sight of that recognition for that those things that happened, even if it happened 2 years ago, because that's a meaningful moment for those that have achieved those levels of success. So we're looking at, and again, I think that'll be part of our leaning in this year a little bit more on personal, and then coming back to something as we move into 2023 and beyond. That's kind of that right balance where we can scale our business with virtual and those areas of training and things that can be done virtually, and then be able to continue to really celebrate in person those human moments.
Absolutely. Such a great point. It is that human component, that human element that you mentioned that sets us apart. It's our superpower. It's what we do better than any other channel. Without those things, people might as well just get their products from somewhere else or walk into a store. So even with all the digital evolution and capabilities we now have, we can't lose that human part. That's so important. I also think it's important, as you mentioned, that, across the journeys, just even understanding, while every journey is going to be different, just understanding that each touch point, each interaction is an opportunity to build and improve the brand and the relationship with the customer or distributor, or if not done right, it has the potential to negatively impact. I think that's really interesting. So I want to transition here to my last couple questions. So as you look back on that pivotal moment when you transitioned from general counsel into the business side, leading a business unit, being a distributor-facing sales leader, if you could go back, what advice would you give to yourself?
Wow, that's a little bit of a provocative question. Maybe not intentionally so. I think the most important thing that I learned through that experience was really to listen more and have fewer answers. It's a continual struggle for me to try and listen and make sure that I'm really understanding what the challenge is. And sometimes even, I'd like the challenge or the input to be different. And so you hear through that lens sometimes what you'd like to hear. And I think, just going back and really absorbing and learning, listening, and really trying to understand, the consultant mindset, the distributor mindset, even more, and not try and put it into the context of, okay, here's my objective as a corporate executive. Here's my objective. Let's get to the point, kind of almost. I'm maybe a little bit impatient. There's a lot of things that I want to do. There's a lot of things every day. I have a long list. And I think, maybe, the corollary to that is enjoying the moment a little bit more, and those experiences. When I look back and I've had so many, but they go by so quickly. And I think, again, in the vein of appreciating that interaction with amazing people, and not really be looking for the next, what's next on the list, what's next can we accomplish, what's next that we need to get done. And really just appreciating the journey and that experience that we're having together in those moments. And I think that, if I had to give advice to myself, because those first few years were a little bit of a whirlwind on the sales side. And really, I think I missed some of the joy that might have come from that, both personally and just, sharing myself. And maybe that's another element that, being more, maybe a little more vulnerable in terms of relationship building. And I found as I'm open to that, and as I'm open to learning about others, that it doesn't diminish maybe what I do understand or what I can bring to add value, but it just enhances the experience for everybody, to have it be sort of that personal, person to person, and growing and learning. I tell my team, my tenets that I work by and that I share with my team is, there's only two outcomes to anything we do. There's a win, which is awesome. And we love that if we have an objective and we win and we have success, or we learn. And the learn is really important. And sometimes, things that might not look like a win can be a learning experience. But there's not a fail. The only fail is if we don't learn as we go forward. So those are probably a couple of things. I took the failures really hard. I took the speed of change and the willingness and the long list more aggressive and seriously than maybe I should have. And maybe just should have, been able to enjoy those learning moments and listening and probably seeing even maybe greater success on the other side of that approach than really pushing, to accomplish a long list of things every day and not feeling that engagement as deeply as I probably could have.
Wow, that's really, really great. I love that your immediate response was to listen. And one of the things I think that's really important about that concept is it's a very active process. It's not passive. A lot of times I think, we hear that and we think, okay, well, we'll just sit back and let kind of other people jump in. But it really is about absorbing and distilling and formulating your plan, your strategy, your relationships. And as you mentioned, the other really powerful thing that allows is it gives others the space. So other executives, other people that you're working to develop and give them the opportunity to grow. It gives them the space to jump in with ideas. If we always jump in first with this is the right answer, we almost always snuff out any of these potentially great ideas. But also, I think a lot of the drive and spirit of some of these, employees and people on our team that are, growing and developing themselves. So I think that's so powerful, that idea to just kind of listen and again, give room for ideas and room for people as part of that process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It has been interesting over the last couple of years with Zoom calls in particular, how that training of listening and an active process where, truly only one person can speak at a time effectively, and the intensity and the energy that it takes to watch virtual, cues and body language and those things that are somewhat, it takes a lot of effort to be in that meeting. And I think those are, that's also been an evolution of listening. And I think everybody's better at it over the last couple of years, which is maybe one of the benefits of all this virtual work that we've been doing. But it is an important concept. And I think, again, as in terms of growth and learning, it's probably one of the more critical things that we can all do better at.
Absolutely. So you have such an incredible perspective with, multiple decades in the channel, operating at the highest levels. You've done work with the DSA as well. As you look at direct selling, the changes that are coming down the road, what do you think direct selling looks like 5 years from now? What are some of the fundamental differences from today?
Yeah, that's a great question, Wayne. I do a lot of thinking about that evolution, and some days it's a revolution, and some days it's an evolution, and some days it's nothing really is going to change except the telephone or the type of telephone that we use, and everything in between. And I really think we're in for an exciting, dynamic time in this business. I really feel like our competitive advantages of the things that we've just talked about, the human connection, the person to person. When you think about, the rest of the world really becoming virtual and digital, and the need for human connection, and no greater example than, really lockdowns over the last few years to really show how important those connections are in person. Everybody had, DoorDash, everybody has, on-demand streaming, of movies and entertainment, and everyone has, education, and you can see your teacher, your professor, or your team online. But what was missing was the human connection. And so I really still believe that is one of our competitive advantages that we can't lose sight of in terms of evolving into a digital platform oriented, another way to share a human power business. And I think, and the corollary to that for me, and where we're really leaning in, is experiences. People more and more are looking for, even, and I guess to some extent, yes, financial rewards and financial success, and at small levels for those that would like to engage at an entry level and have a few $100s in additional income, all the way to full-time replacement income for those that essentially build teams of sales teams and sell and move a lot of volume and a lot of product. That financial reward, I think one of the biggest things that will evolve is that will no longer be the attractive mechanism. And I say that because a lot, what my children aspire to do. I have 20-something-year-old, young millennials who are growing up, Gen Z who are growing up, and they're, what they want, what's important to them, what's attractive to them in a culture and in a community and in a brand. And when I look at what they want, it's not oriented first and foremost about financial success. And so I think one of those evolutions is kind of reorienting the entry points around the brand and around the opportunity, if you will, to be a part of our brand to an experience. And that goes to that, engagement at a really cool event where they might come and in person do a scavenger hunt, a digital scavenger hunt or something. Get outside and go find a creek and go hike a rock and go find a race to run. Those experiences are going to be powerful, attractive mechanisms to the product. And then because of those experiences, people will be exposed to the opportunity. So, when I look at the next 4 or 5 years, Wayne, that's really what I see, that evolution is that reorientation of what is kind of the tip of the spear attraction. And I think it's even more important where, you have 3 to 6 seconds in a scroll of somebody, zooming through an Instagram scroll or a bunch of reels. And those have to be sort of powerful introductions. And I see fewer of those that are, oriented around the financial opportunity in the successful consultants that we have. And I think that will continue to be an important evolution. And not just from a regulatory perspective, there's certainly benefits there. From a consumer perspective, we want to set expectations where people, receive exactly what they think that they're being exposed to. And when we meet those expectations, the reputation of the industry goes up, the reputation of our brand goes up, and there's no longer any of this hangover. And the other thing that's just in our favor, Wayne, is today, the idea of a person sharing a product that they like and being paid for it or compensated in a way for it it's almost like a novel idea for the Gen Z. It's like, oh wow, this is great. Now we can do this. And for those of us that have a little gray hair and been around a little while, we can say yes, we've had this type of approach to sharing products for decades, if not over 100 years. And it's still really cool, and it's still pretty exciting when somebody can share. And so I think that that orientation a little bit as to what's the tip of the spear, what's the attractive mechanism, will continue to evolve. And I think the companies that get it right over the next few years are the ones that are going to be able to say our experience is the best. Our experience is attractive. Our experience at every touch point is human. And I think that will be, that's certainly where I hope to take Arbonne into the future. And I think a lot of our best leading companies also have, that idea. And then use the tools, use the technology to understand how to create those experiences, to understand where the ROI is on our investments in those experiences. That will help us be better businessmen and women and people. And I think that's really the opportunity for us is to, leverage the technology so that we have more time, leverage the technology so that we spend more time with our families, so that we spend more time with each other in meaningful moments, and not leverage the technology to make more technology moments, but really make those the conveniences in our business. And I think that's really where I see, the best companies in our industry evolving. Are the ones that are going, towards that experiential route.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I do think we have the opportunity to become increasingly relevant. This kind of digital blending with the personal and human touch really plays to our strengths. And I love one of my biggest takeaways that I wrote down again is just making sure that we leverage digital and the human aspect to really kind of connect with and create those meaningful moments at every point, at every touch point, at every spot along the customer and distributor journey. Tyler, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights. Look forward to continuing to watch your journey there at Arbonne, and please give Elizabeth our best.
I will. Thank you so much, Wayne. Appreciate having me on, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
Yes. Yeah, DSU.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you plan to join us in April for the DSN Global Celebration and DSU events. Visit dsu2022.com for more information and to register. We also invite you to join the new DSN VIP community. It's a new way for direct selling executives to keep up with what's happening in the channel in real time through the convenience of text. Simply text the word JOIN to 214-239-3043 and follow the prompts to add DSN as a contact in your phone. Then tell us what types of news and stories you want to receive, and we will create a custom news feed just for you. There's no cost to join. Simply text us at 214-239-3043. Thank you for listening and supporting DSN and the Direct Approach podcast.